Hello everyone, and welcome back to Hexen, where today we'll be playing through Hub 2, Shadowwood. On the Titan difficulty, getting all kills with the fighter.
My servants can smell your blood, human.
And in this hub, there are 3 levels available that we can access, provided we do some small puzzling. First, just gonna kill a couple enemies here and then run away from the remaining ones to get our 3rd weapon, which is laying over here for the fighter. All of the 3 classes weapons are in this area, so I will just go unlock all the levels first before moving onwards. Jumping over here, we can get the Hammer of Retribution. You can also just jump like this, which has a melee attack which deals decent damage. I think it's actually slightly more than the axe, but it is a bit slower. Doesn't cost any mana to use the melee attack either, which is lovely. And there is also, finally, a ranged attack, which throws red hammers at the enemy that explode and deal a decent amount of splash damage as well. And this is really going to be our main ranged option, and it is quite powerful. 2 of these attacks kill a Chaos Serpent, and all in all, it is quite pleasing. When you pull this switch right here, it is going to open the way back again, where there is now a whole bunch of centaurs waiting for us. I'm just gonna take care of them one by one, or maybe a little more with my hammer, and then move up to kill some of the remaining enemies, like the Chaos Serpent in that little tower, and the one still waiting for us up there. Just one more hit to go. There we go. Now, if we pull this switch right here, it is going to raise a small jumping puzzle that you can jump on top of immediately while it's still raising. Alternatively, you can just climb back up and do the jumping puzzle regularly. But it does get a little bit more tricky as this thing is fully raised to the top, as suddenly projectiles will be flying all over the place, as you can see. There's also going to be a whole bunch over there, but they generally don't reach far enough to reach you over here. There is, however, a new item called the Dark Servant. Using it spawns a Molitor from Heretic, and it is alright. It has its uses from time to time, but I personally don't know where I'm going to use it just yet. But having a Molitor fight for you is just quite nice. It's only for a short period of time, but it's quite... he does his best. Also, it opened up this little room with a whole bunch of gargoyles inside it that show off the incredible power of this weapon's splash damage. Pulling this switch over here raises a staircase in the middle platform, which we can use to climb the tower. And pressing this switch allows us to access the first of 3 available levels, which is the swamp, which is waiting for us over there. But as I said previously, I will first just open up the remaining levels. There is, however, one more thing before I forget, which is if you touch the edge of this part of the jumping puzzle, it opens up a small room with a bunch more gargoyles inside it, which I'm just gonna destroy with my axe and then leave. More likely than not, it's because you can jump to this side before you pull that switch, and then you can technically do this jumping puzzle like this. It's kind of tricky, but I don't think it's impossible. But I'd rather just do it the easy way instead. Moving on ahead, there is a bunch of enemies still alive, but I will now be going to open up the 2nd level, which is near this shadowy area. If we touch it, a wall opens with an Etten behind it and a bunch of gargoyles. If you fall down here, you die instantly, so watch out for that. And run over the edges here to make it to this switch and a chaos device. Pull it and then go back again to then open up the 2nd doorway, and also the next level that is also available, called the Wasteland, I believe, or Wastelands, one of the 2 for sure. Kill a couple more centaurs and things, and then briefly go back to this area, because this is where the mage would get the Arc of Death. And it's a pretty decent weapon. It also consumes green mana. It doesn't have a melee weapon attack as per usual. And it deals triple damage to centaurs. It can climb up walls to destroy the Chaos Serpents, for instance, and it's pretty good. In tighter areas, it's a little less good just because when it hits a wall that doesn't have a platform on top of it, it tends to just disappear. And that's not really ideal, so for most situations it's pretty good, but occasionally you're gonna have to switch to a different weapon. Also, never really talked about these power-ups, which are the combined mana power-ups, which give you both blue and green mana, which is gonna be useful now that we are actually getting green mana weaponry. Now moving on ahead, there is one more level to open up, which is right here. There's little trees over here that you can waste your blue mana on, but they don't actually get destroyed by the axe for some reason. You can blow them up with the hammer, however, or probably any explosion really, but the hammer definitely works. But for the most part, it's just nice little bit of decoration with a fun little animation attached to it, provided you hit it with fire. And as we did, there are no more trees alive in this place. So we can move on ahead. Run into that area immediately because it wakes up everyone, including a couple of Chaos Serpents who are probably going to start infighting, as you can see. And this hammer is so good. It's actually so satisfying to use, so very happy about it. Now you could go in this direction, which is going to open up a bunch of traps and nasty things, but I'd rather kill the enemies first. So let's go through the right side, but there was one Etten over there that I wanted to kill before I forget about it. There's a couple more Chaos Serpents waiting for us here, which is fortunately no problem at all now that we have great explosive weaponry at our disposal. And a couple gargoyles, some bracers, which is always nice, and a couple more Chaos Serpents hiding up here, which you can slowly but surely destroy by just jumping up and down with the axe like this. No problem at all. Now, there are 6 squares in this room, and if you get a little bit closer, you can see some kind of icon on top of it. In this hub, whenever you solve 1/6 of the puzzle, it's going to light up the part that you've actually solved, so that's quite useful to keep track of what you've done so far. Now, if we cross over this, it's going to start shooting projectiles. It's going to start shooting projectiles everywhere, in this building at least. But we can now go over here where a staircase has raised, jump down here and pull a switch. Now if you are playing as the cleric, this is where you would get the firestorm weapon, which is pretty good. Doesn't have infinite range, but it has decent range. It shoots a bolt of fire at enemies, which then explodes and deals a whole bunch of damage. Not too great against centaurs because it first hits the enemy, then they block, and then it deals the splash damage, which is a pretty large part of the damage that it deals. But overall, I don't think centaurs actually reflect it when they block, so all in all, it's actually quite a useful weapon. Pulling that switch, however, also lowered this staircase and allowed us to go into this small cave. When we go into the cave entirely, it's going to lower a whole bunch of crushers, and this can be a bit of an issue from time to time because the way the script works is that first it crushes, then it waits for a while, and then it goes back up again. But occasionally an enemy gets stuck inside it, and the crusher takes so long to crush the enemy that the crusher doesn't go back up again afterwards. And you can get some weird situations where the button might get stopped. Rather, the button might get blocked by a wall. And this button is quite useful because it makes all of these walls basically lower to the same height more or less, and it makes it a bit easier to grab the power-ups. It's effectively optional due to the fact that you can also just walk around this ledge, and this is really the main place where you need to go to actually continue anyway. But getting a mystic urn like that is just quite nice. Also, I guess that texture is broken. I've never really noticed that. Might just be a GZDoom thing. I'm honestly not sure. Either way, this is the 3rd level that we have now opened up, and now I'm gonna enter this one. These are the Caves of Circe, I believe it's called. And there is a large quantity of Chaos Serpents awaiting us. I'm more or less doing this in the order of what is most likely to kill me with shenaniganry, and this one is probably at the top of the list due to the fact that I want to be able to get all the kills, and I'm gonna do some weird jumps to do so. I'm gonna grab these flechettes. Apparently we ran out of flechettes in the previous hub, which is unfortunate because it moves the flechettes away from the purple quartz flasks, and therefore it can be a little bit more tedious to use because the inventory system just puts it back at the start again. Also just gonna use my bracers because why not? Now, this little cave is where we need to go when we get close to it. Little bats fly around. So that's nice. Jump down. Bunch of Ettins waiting for us over here. We're just gonna hold our trusty attack button with our wonderful axe and destroy them all. And go through this middle path for a second. Just gonna kill all of the Chaos Serpents over here to make sure that I can reach the first part of I'm probably gonna die. Here is a Chaos device, which is possibly gonna be useful later. And we have reached a whole bunch of tiny little cliffs and also a small pig. And if we jump down, we can grab this small pig, which is called the Porculator, and can turn enemies into pigs to destroy them more easily. It works effectively the same as the Morph Ovum from Heretic, in that it just shoots a bunch of eggs at the enemies and then suddenly they're gonna be turned into an animal. I'm also gonna just do some random jumps, seemingly random, to wake up as many enemies as possible. By just jumping over some of these holes, it's more likely than not that some of the Afrits that are in the bottom of these cliffs are going to see me. And also over here is a teleporter that brings you back to the start of the level, which will be taken eventually, but for now, I'm just gonna slowly walk back again. Eventually these Afrits will just follow me into these caves, but occasionally we can kill a couple of them over here as well, so that is very convenient. Actually a surprisingly decent amount got up there immediately, so that's nice. If we're missing a couple kills at the end, then more likely than not I'm just gonna come back here with flight, but it does seem like we got so many Afrits to actually fly up, so yeah, no worries, I guess. Fair enough. Now there is one kill in this level in particular, which is surprisingly difficult to find, and I'll get back to that. Also, I think this is where the mage can get frost shards as well, like once again, which we already saw in the first level. You can really just get ammo from it this way, but it's either this little platform or the one that's over there, and we'll get to that when we get to that. Also, there is this wall. This wall is going to show up in a couple different places. They're all going to open up at the same time, and when they all open up at the same time, I'll mention it, but for now, just keep those walls in mind. Now, this texture is slightly different from the ones in the walls next to it, and when we push it, it's going to spin around, and there is going to be one Chaos Serpent in here. This one's quite deviously hidden due to the fact that it is just very much not obvious. This is more a deathmatch secret because there's weapons and several items, I think, in here on deathmatch, but on single player, unfortunately not the case. So we're just gonna take what we can get. A similar looking texture on the other side as well. And yeah, very missable. Gonna go through the middle path now, where there is yet another one of these walls which we cannot quite pass through until we open up all of them. One Afrit over here, no worries. Also a bunch more Chaos Serpents here as well, which can deal decent damage, but we do still have a lot of Quartz Flasks available, so no worries there. And I'm really just clearing out this area as much as I can before opening up the doors, one of which is also over here again. And down here, I believe, are a couple more Chaos Serpents, but they should start infighting with the Ettins reasonably easily. Usually they do, at least. There we go. That deals plenty of damage to the Chaos Serpents and makes it no more problem than any other enemy, fortunately. So having cleared all of that up, I'm just gonna briefly go to a locked door because there's a couple more enemies waiting for us over here. But over here is the Horn Key door, which will open eventually. I guess the gimmick of this particular hub, while going through these caves anyway, is each level has a key, and each level has 2 locked doors for the other levels' keys. So the key we can find here, we can't actually use in this level, but we can use it in the other 2 levels instead, so that's nice. So this is where we fell down at the start when we went into the cave. Here is where we killed a Chaos Serpent, and here is a tiny gap that you can fall down. And there is some mesh armor, and a door opens afterwards. And when you go through this, this is when all of those walls open that I showed off previously. So at this point, a lot of areas just open to lead to the first of the 3 keys, which is the cave key. I'm gonna try to just not die to these chaos serpents and just throw a bunch of hammers at them from a distance. Watch out from the enemies behind you. And also after killing those chaos serpents, it opens up this door right here, which is going to be the next place where I'm very likely to die due to a mechanic and me being greedy. So let's see if we can get these chaos serpents out of here. There is one more available, along with various other enemies. You may have noticed the swamp key door waiting for us over here. And I'd rather not get too close in that direction for reasons. A couple more items and a couple more items for us to grab, which is lovely. And it was either that platform or this platform where the mages, ice shards, frost shards, whatever it's called, is waiting for you. A couple more bats, always fun. Anyway, here's where the greed comes in. There's a helmet over there, and when we get close to it, the ceiling lowers a little bit. And let me just open up the auto map and zoom in a bit. With the power of video editing, I can probably show off where the 3 line devs are, which make the ceiling lower slightly, and where the line dev is, which crushes you immediately. Unfortunately, the line dev for crushing you is very close to this helmet. However, if we just move there with mouse movement, we can very slowly nudge in there, not trigger the thing that crushes us and destroys us, and get a free helmet that way. So that's nice. But as I said before, this one lowers it a bit, this one lowers it a bit, and now it's completely inaccessible and possibly crushed actually if you let that happen. But eventually, you do get a free helmet out of it if you do it right, and only instant death if you don't, so I'd say it's worth it. Couple more flechettes waiting for us up here, which is nice. And that is that. That's effectively all we will be able to do here for now. We got the cave key, which is going to be useful in the next 2 levels. And with that, you can go through this teleporter and leave. To go to the next level, which is going to be the Wastelands, where I am almost certainly going to get lost, so my apologies for that in advance. But it is a level where everything looks very similar to one another, and quite frankly, as much as I've practiced it, haven't had an attempt where I didn't get lost. So let's see what happens today. We start off with Chaos Serpent. Also, there are these patches of dirt on the floor here that kind of look like something would go through it, like a mole. And you kind of see a giant spike in front of me right now on the lower area there. And that is said giant spike that is also going to go through the floor over here. They go up and down at random. And if you stand on top of it while this thing raises, you instantly die. So to make sure you don't die a violent death, you probably want to avoid stepping on those little spike traps. However, it's honestly quite unlikely they are going to kill you. I had, in my 3 playthroughs, like 1 with each class, I died once by accident to a spike trap. So it's just very random, but you need to look out for it. Another thing to look out for in these levels, this level in particular, not these levels, is these types of rooms with a small wall blocking your way and a small passageway which perfectly fits said small wall. Because in this level, there's a bunch of ettins, and about half of the ettins that we see, and half of the ettins that, the other half that are just normal ones, half of them are tagged with the number of, if there's 5 of us or less remaining in the level, please open these doors. And there's a couple of them in the level, and it honestly makes the whole ordeal a little bit confusing due to the fact that suddenly those things are open and you might not actually realize why. Due to the fact that suddenly the walls aren't there anymore because they line up perfectly afterwards, so it's quite annoying. This is a nice little landmark for now, but it is going to disappear in a bit. I'm gonna kill a couple of enemies, not in that direction just yet, we'll get to that later. First, let's kill a couple more gargoyles. I'm gonna kill a couple in this direction. This is the direction I was intending to kill gargoyles in, just because it's nice to get these particular ones out of the way in terms of trying to get all kills. Now we are back at the start. I will once again go through this little loop over here, but this time I'm going to continue forwards in this direction. And I think after we kill one more Etten, it's going to open up the cave. So let's see if that's true. Yep, as you can see, this one's opening right now. And when it is done opening, it's barely even visible that the thing was here to begin with. The texture is slightly misaligned with the rest of the wall, but overall, you're not going to be seeing this when you run past it like that, so very missable. It leads you to the north part of the map, and that's an area where we can't currently really do anything right now, other than kill a bunch of enemies, and I'd rather leave that for later when we can actually clear out the whole place. So instead, for now, just gonna kill a couple of enemies that are going to run in our direction, like that Etten over there. And let's go in this direction and see where we end up. There's a Chaos Serpent over there. Now, one interesting thing is when you use the Porculator against a blocking centaur, it is going to bounce the pig projectiles back at you. And normally, when that turns you into a pig, you can go through areas that are slightly too low to go through. But this particular area is unfortunately just an invisible wall, so we can't just skip our way to there, which is sad, but it is what it is. So, now we're in dangerous territory of me genuinely being lost, but we're just gonna see if I can handle that. Some enemies respawned, unfortunately, but we'll deal with that when we deal with that. And I think if I go this way, that's going to take me to the home cave key lock. And that is correct because there is a bunch of Chaos Serpents over here. And that is one of the areas where I'd like to go, because it takes us to the button that was in front of that Chaos Serpent that we killed previously. And that is going to solve one part of the puzzle. This takes you back to the Caves of Circe. Basically, one of the rules of these levels is also, if you use the key and it opens up a portal, it's going to take you to the level where you got the key from. So that's a nice little thing to remember. Kill a couple more Afrits guarding this path. Eventually a bridge is going to spawn, which allows us to get up there. But there is still a couple more Afrits to kill while we wait for the bridge, which has spawned at this point. Sometimes an extra bit of bridge spawns, I think because an Afrit might just be blocking the path and it can't spawn until it dies. But over here is a Mystic Urn and 1/6 of the puzzle. Now with that, we can use the staircase to go back up and remove a landmark, which is quite useful, which is this rather odd looking wall that was in the middle of nowhere. Also requires a key for some reason, but fair enough. And I am once again just trusting myself that I'm going in the right direction. This should take us back to the Chaos Serpent area. And up ahead are a couple more eggs. Also, one thing of note, I guess, is that these spikes can also kill enemies, but it's very rare. But when it does happen, the spike is going to be covered in blood entirely, and there's just a bunch of gore next to it, so it is quite visible that something like that happened. Over here is a door that you need to go through. Might look like a secret, but it is required. It takes you to the next of the 3 keys, and also a bunch of centaurs, and a bunch of spikes as well, so be careful of that. And to our left we have an area that leads to the horn key, which is waiting for us over here. Also a large quantity of afrits and platforms that lower, so watch out. There is a switch down there which lets you lower this last platform to get back semi-unscathed. And the lava doesn't actually deal that much damage compared to some other lavas in Heretic or Hexen-like games, so it's not too bad, but watch out. A couple of stalkers waiting for us over here, not the scariest thing in the world, and also an axe, so we can get some of our blue mana back, which is nice. kill the last of these stalkers, and that more or less sums up everything that we can do in this level. So let us leave through this wall once again and go to the swamp, which we can reach by just going through here, going back again, and going onwards. Might not be the quickest route to reach the swamp, but it is an effective route to reach the swamp. And at the time, I just wanted to get out of the wasteland, which is really my main motivation to take any exit out of there. But there's still a stalker alive, that's interesting. Fairly unusual, but it happens, I suppose. Get a little bit of mana and go to the swamp area. You can destroy these trees with a hammer. You can also destroy it with the axe. This one you can't destroy with the axe for some reason. And there are about 6 stalkers waiting for us in the water here, so that's going to be a lot of fun to deal with. Not going to waste any mana. Sometimes their head falls off in a rather strange fashion. I'll accept it the way it is. And I think after this one we should be done with stalkers. Let's just kill these Ettins waiting for us inside this building. And this is where all kills gets a little bit more complicated, because currently our enemy count is 125, but if I break this pot, it is 126. And the main reason that that makes it slightly more complicated is normally I just look for strips that spawn enemies, because those are the only things that weren't counted before up to this hub. And it was easier to find things that say thing spawn rather than look for things that can also spawn an object technically. Fortunately, the only things in Hexen that can spawn enemies this way are 3 types of pots and a suit of armor, which we are going to see later in this level. The suit of armor in this level doesn't actually have an enemy inside it, and I honestly am not 100% sure if there is a suit of armor in Hexen with an enemy inside it. But if there is, I'll find it in a future video, almost certainly. And here's the small puzzle. There are 4 braziers with molotovs or whatever holding them. One of them is not lit. And when you press the non-lit one, it opens up and we can get a whole bunch of discs of repulsion. If you're playing as the cleric, you can also get a new serpent staff over here, so that's nice. And one thing I forgot to mention, because I quite frankly didn't know it, is that discs of repulsion work quite well through walls. So if I use it over there, suddenly everyone starts infighting, and I can press this switch and safely go over here and just watch the carnage unfold as much as possible. And maybe help out a little bit as well to speed up the process somewhat, due to the fact that these centaurs are otherwise never going to die, or at least it'll take a long period of time. Over here is a button behind a door, which opens up another door with a button behind it, which opens up another door with some enemies behind it instead, and some other points of interest. First, just gonna kill a bunch of enemies. There is a chaos serpent inside this tiny house. With some jumps you can take care of it rather easily. And over there is the castle key, which is going to be relevant later on. For now, this is the portal that takes you out of this area. There is a switch over here and a door that is barred from the inside. If we press this switch, that door doesn't open, but if we move a whole bunch further ahead, a switch will now be available to us. Also, the Stalker boss enemies are now available. They are not my friends. They are actually surprisingly good at dealing large quantities of damage and occasionally killing me as well, so I'm gonna be a little careful here. Gonna try to just get those melee attacks in. There should be one over here as well. There we go. There's a whole bunch of them. Also, this area is now open, which is the start of the level. It was previously blocked off, but it opened somewhere along the line. I'm actually not 100% sure where, but somewhere in the whole process of getting here it opened up. And I think there's probably one more Stalker boss over here. Yeah. So watch out for those. They are rather dangerous. Now I'm going to select my chaos device and carefully just sort of go over the edge here. And also on this side. If I fall down, I can use a chaos device to get out unscathed, but hopefully that's not going to be necessary. Getting on those edges is going to wake up a whole bunch of afrits that are at the bottom of this pit, and it's just a nice little thing to deal with those rather than having to fly down there later. Pulling this switch, which once again appeared when I pressed this little switch in the tiny house over there, is going to lower the walls and also give us another use for our discs of repulsion, which I haven't really gone into. Because next to just pushing enemies around, you can also use it to throw enemies off of a cliff. Because enemies do actually take fall damage in this game. Just need to be careful not to get accidentally pushed off, but provided that doesn't happen, I can just throw a couple of them down there. I think there's one more down here as well, but just gonna use a couple of them to try and kill as many enemies as possible. I've made kind of a big mess by getting the Afrits over here, but at least we managed to kill a couple of centaurs by just knocking them off instead, so that is lovely. There's also the sounds of many chaos serpents nearby, and also this Etten, which always kind of gets stuck in the geometry, I think, so he's not really able to do much of anything. Might just be the staircase or something that he has difficulty with. And I think in other source ports, these enemies also get kind of stuck in each other, but in GZDoom they don't, so that might just be a bug they fixed or something. Honestly, I'm once again not sure. But with that, I'm gonna go upstairs, where there is a bunch of enemies waiting for us. I'm actually just going to use a couple of flechettes, because there's a bunch of them here anyway, and otherwise I'm never gonna use them. So I might as well just throw a whole bunch of them at the enemies here, because we're gonna get a whole bunch of them back after that anyway. Now, one more thing before moving on in this area, after killing one more Chaos Serpent, is here is once and again a great example of using the Disc of Repulsion through a door. Pushing him, usually if you use it in this corner over here, it tends to push a Chaos Serpent and a Centaur into each other, and they start infighting with each other. This time, unfortunately, it didn't happen, but I think it did end up moving the Chaos Serpent and the Centaur, and that's why they're fighting each other now, because the Centaur got hit by one of the fireballs. So all in all, I'd say it worked out just fine. Also, some weird stuff is going on with the fireballs of that Chaos Serpent, so I'm not really sure what's happening there. The Chaos Serpent has now realized that the Centaur has been hitting him, but apparently the Centaur was quite low on health and ended up dying in that battle. Now there's a couple of things to do here. First of all is this door right here, which we can open with the cave key, I think? Either the cave key or the horn key, one of the two. Either way we can do everything because we have both keys available right now. Jump down here where there is a couple of Afrits waiting for us. And also a small passageway slightly behind us after running through, with a bunch more Afrits, and sometimes possibly an Etten as well if it has respawned in the 4-minute timer. Kill one more over there. We will have to return here later, because there's a couple Afrits we can't quite reach, unfortunately. But I'm mostly here to solve one part of the puzzle, and then leave again. Also, an important note is that message that shows up, 1/6 of the puzzle has been solved in the Shadow Wood. The puzzle isn't actually considered solved until the part that says in the Shadow Wood has shown up on screen. That's unfortunately just the way the order of operation works with those buttons. So keep that in mind if you're suddenly stuck even though you swear you solved the puzzle. If that does happen, you can just return to the level and it will finish running the script and just say the last part of the message. But it is a bit annoying when it happens. Over here is the castle key door. We did see the castle key previously. We can get the castle key by going through this area with a whole bunch of Ettens. Jump down this well. Press one of the two buttons that are on either side. They both do the same thing. Try not to stand underneath the bucket while the water is raising because it's an elevator and it will just lower you back down again. Go all the way back to the little hut, which was previously barred from the inside. And over here, we have the castle key. So that's very lovely. Unfortunately, the castle key is used for exactly one door, and you may have noticed the small security flaw that this building has when you saw the Centaur and the Chaos Serpent fight with one another. And that's that window right there. And if you do a not very tricky jump at all, you can just go in And interestingly enough, the door also opens from this side without having the key, and it just stays open forever. So now we have literally zero use for the thing. Here is an icon of the defender. Usually there's a set of armor here and one over here. And these are these suits of armor that can contain an enemy, technically, but we'll see if that happens in the game. Blow that up because there is a switch behind it as well, which is going to open up the door, which is down here, which is the next area where we want to go. This is where we can get the third of the 3 keys, but also solve one more part of the puzzle. So let's just destroy these enemies. This takes you to this pretty cool looking area actually, with like stains of beer and big old pots and things that they would have in these times. It's just a nicely decorated area and I quite like it. It also has 4 fireplaces, with one of the walls of the fireplace looking different than the other ones. So we can push that one, move on, kill one more enemy, pull a switch, and go up an elevator to what is possibly the worst puzzle in the game. Over here there is a whole bunch of enemies, largely centaurs, but also a Chaos Serpent. And more often than not, the Chaos Serpent is very eager to cause a lot of infighting, and we can just sort of attack anyone else who actually wants to fight. But for the most part, it tends to look like this. I've seen the Chaos Serpent win this fight, but it's just very unlikely with the amount of centaurs there are. I'm gonna help him out a little bit, but the centaur or the Chaos Serpent does deal a large quantity of damage to those enemies, so that is very nice. Moving on, over here, if we move forward, everything gets very loud. There's darts everywhere. And if we move a little further, it changes the puzzle once again. Over here is the swamp key, and we have 3 doors to choose from. This is door number 1. It always teleports you back to the start. This is door number 2. It might teleport you back to the start, but this time it didn't. And door number 3 will now... Let's just silence that a little bit. So, when the walls raise, it's going to generate a number that is either 2 or 3. And if it generates 2, then you have to go through passageway number 3, and if it generates 3, you have to go through passageway number 2. But, if you're unlucky, because there's also a third argument, which is the roll an 11-sided die, and if it's 4 or lower, teleport back anyway. And that can make this puzzle very tedious, due to the fact that you just get teleported back in every passageway, and you can't really tell what's going on. Fortunately, this time we were lucky, so we just ran past immediately. But it's genuinely terrible. It actually is. But moving on, press this switch, which is hiding in the other fireplace, so we can use what I think is the horn key right here to open up another door and kill a bunch more enemies in this area. Also a couple of flechettes, which are guarded by 1 gargoyle. And 1 more centaur over here, no worries at all. And before you know it, we've done a full loop and we can go upstairs to a couple of Chaos Serpents who managed to hit me quite ferociously. I'm gonna press this switch now just so the message can continue playing, and all these enemies are melee enemies anyway, so I can just throw hammers at them without them really being able to do much of anything. So that's nice. But that is all the puzzle solved in the swamp, and this portal takes us back to the Wastelands, so we can actually finish up this area now because we have all the keys available. With the swamp key, we can go to the northern area. Alternatively, if you don't want to kill a bunch of Ettins, you can also just jump to the other side. It's a slightly tricky jump, and I'm currently scared to walk over a spike, so I'd rather not. But you can jump to that side. Fortunately, you can also just walk there now that the door is open because we killed oh so many Ettins. And we can get an item that is waiting for us over there, which I do quite like to have because it is the Crater of Might. And the Crater of Might gives you all your ammo back. It sets it to 200 for both green and blue mana. And obviously that's just very useful. The fighter honestly doesn't have to do that much ammo management compared to the other classes. And in that, the fighter is just really strong due to the fact that ammo management can be a little annoying with the cleric especially. But it's it is still a nice thing to have as the fighter as well, especially when we get our fully built ultimate weapon, because it does tend to eat through a lot of ammo, but we'll see that in the next video maybe. For now, in this area you have to kill a large amount of centaurs, and when you have killed enough of them, the walls lower to reveal this whole area. This one is a little bit more obvious than the tiny doors in the cave system where you have to kill a bunch of Ettins due to the fact that it's more or less the entire area that opens. So I'm not too bothered about this one. But I am still a little bothered about the Ettins thing, so I'm just gonna mention it one more time. Kill a bunch of stalkers. Once again, these are the stalker bosses, so watch out for their projectiles as well, because they are quite ferocious. And there's just a decent amount of them in here as well, so rather easy to get snuck up upon by these enemies. I'm having some trouble playing whack-a-mole right now, but hopefully in a second these are all going to be dead. I guess they can't go downstairs. I never really thought about that. They can also like not get attacked by the porculator or banishment device and all those things either, so there is some strange things related to them. I'm just gonna run through this little passageway over here before I move on. This is a very dark passageway. There is one Chaos Serpent waiting for us over here that I'd like to kill. Can't really see what's happening. And then slowly move forward to get another porculator, and then do not move any further forward, or you fall into a pit and die. So watch out for that. You could just use a torch, but I like to play it slightly dangerously because it's just a very, very small cave. And I'd rather not have the torch active the entire time I'm not there. These are the Boots of Speed, which temporarily make you go faster. They have their uses. I'm probably not going to be using them much, but they do exist. And maybe when hunting for enemies, it's actually kind of a nice thing to have, but other than that, probably not going to worry about it too much. Over here is the Swamp Key door, which you can tell by the little swamp symbol, which is a stalker face. And behind that is a bunch of centaurs and a switch. And pulling that switch turns on all the lights and also lowers this gigantic wall with a whole bunch of enemies and just a giant temple area waiting for us over here, which is rather impressive. They managed to hide that behind a singular switch. Killing a whole bunch of enemies, like this whole area. You can walk past this stuff the entire time, but this whole temple was just guarded by a giant wall. But as we run in circles to kill the many Chaos Serpents and whatnot, we can get one more Creator of Might over there, and we can just kill the remaining enemies over here, so that is nice. Now getting the Creator of Might turns on the lights and also spawns a whole bunch of Ettins, which are not the scariest thing in the world to deal with. It's only like 8 of them, I think, so in the end, might actually just be like 6. No, it's probably 8. Let's say 8. There's number 8 right there. Get a couple more items and move on through this door, which sometimes doesn't open when you press it. Not sure why. Honestly, not sure why. It is not locked at all, but occasionally it just makes this sound and then does nothing. But here is 1/6 of the puzzle more. We have 2 enemies remaining, so we're just gonna go run around because we have effectively done everything there is to do in this level now. I can hear an Ettin nearby, so I'm hoping it's somewhere over here. Let's just go up there. Oh, there it is. Now it's just a matter of finding 2 more Ettins. I guess I may have misseen that just now, but that's okay. Just gonna run around as quickly as I can to find some probably respawned Ettins. There's one. And hopefully a little further up ahead, there is number 2, which is very convenient because this is also the portal that I want to go through. So that's all kills in the Wasteland, and that brings us back to the caves of Circe, which is convenient. If we follow the left wall, we can get to the Horn Key door, which is waiting for us over here, as we saw previously. Press the button, or the door, I guess, to kill a couple more Ettins and solve yet another part of the puzzle. And I can hear an Ettin nearby, so I kind of want to just take care of that before moving on, but we'll see about that later, I suppose. It's not a very big level, so I'm not gonna worry about it too much. Worrying about it a little bit, but not like a whole lot. There we go. And we are currently in the cave key room, so over here we can go up and go to the swamp key area, where there is yet another piece of the puzzle waiting for us behind a couple of Ettins. All in all, not the scariest thing in the world. And some more Ettins up here as well. And I'm hoping that we killed all the Afrits. There is at least one more Ettin alive. There is one more Ettin alive, and that's good. So we have killed all the Afrits, so that's nice. At this point, it just becomes a matter of trying to find where that sound came from. Probably over here? Yeah. That does tend to happen, that he hangs out over there. Sometimes you jump on his head and then you don't know what's going on, but you're getting attacked. That can be quite scary. But that is all the kills in the caves of Circe. And with that, let us go back to this area, where you can just hear a door open, which was this door, because we have solved the puzzle. And next to that, we can also enter the secret level, but I will do that after dealing with this boss level over here, because we're going to get flight, and that's just a nice little thing to have. Now, the boss level is quite unusual. There is 4 locked doors and a whole bunch of Ettins. When we kill one specific Ettin, it's going to open up the first puzzle, and it chooses randomly which puzzle that is. This is the first Ettin. If I swing my axe, everyone's gonna wake up, but fortunately flechettes don't wake up enemies. So I can just kill that one quite safely, and then run to the first puzzle over there, without suddenly getting surrounded by a large quantity of Ettins all over the place. Although, this door I guess isn't a little bit of an awkward spot. When you go through one of these doors, it is going to push you into the puzzle room, so you have to be a little careful with that. Some of them have crushers inside them, and that can catch you off guard rather easily if you suddenly get pushed into one. Here is a fun little jumping puzzle, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrible at this one. But hopefully we can make something work over here. There we go. Actually went really well. Fair enough. Press the button and open the entrance door. And now that we're over here, we can funnel all the Ettins that were inside the giant room onto a tiny staircase, and they cannot actually get close to us. And that just makes life significantly easier. Otherwise, just use a whole bunch of flechettes and just kill them that way, because it is a rather effective strategy as well. But before you know it, all the Ettins are going to be dead. Here's a centaur, which came out of this room right here, which has crushers inside it. And if you don't get crushed, you can go over here and let them get crushed instead. We can use the porculator here, I suppose, just to lower the amount of enemies that we have to kill. Couldn't quite see the pigs, unfortunately, but we'll see them at some point in the future, probably. But it does pretty much insta-kill them when you attack them with a weapon after that, so that's nice. The door on this side opens when I think you kill one of these specific horse people. Centaurs, there we go. But when you press that button, it's going to spawn a couple more, and also open up a door on the other side, which spawns even more centaurs. And I'm just gonna chill over here, and I guess I could do this. Unfortunately, if the Dark Servant doesn't have room to spawn, it just doesn't do anything. It just sits there and you can pick it up again. So unfortunately, just not gonna get any use out of that one. Just gonna throw some flechettes instead, because that's honestly a pretty effective strategy to deal with most of your problems as well. But just gonna grab that and press this button so we can leave once more to go to the third puzzle, which has now opened. Also, I should mention, with 3 out of 4 of the puzzles, it has a piece of the ultimate weapon, and it depends on which class you are, which puzzle it is. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember which puzzle has which, but they're pretty much impossible to miss as the cleric and mage, so really only worry about the fighter one, which we'll see in a minute anyway. This puzzle has a whole bunch of afrits, which we're just going to take care of one at a time, I guess. It has a little bit of water to the right. There's a switch to our left. Pressing the switch creates a bridge, but it also lowers the water and shows this symbol, which is the solution of the puzzle on the other side. because if you press the wrong of these 3 switches, it teleports you back and starts shooting fireballs, thus making the puzzle a little bit more difficult as well. But we can press that to open the door, and we can use one of the wrong answers to just teleport back again, so that is lovely. And that brings us to the 4th puzzle. It's not really puzzles, I guess, when it's just a button that you have to press and kill a bunch of enemies, but let's just call it a puzzle. Because what else are you going to call it? Get into the door. Try to kill the Chaos Serpents as quickly as you can, because they deal a lot of damage. Also, the pillars lower after a while to reveal a bunch of Ettins. That actually almost went very wrong. But occasionally that can happen. When you are not playing this carefully, there is a very good chance that you suddenly take large quantities of damage and just die instead. So, the game is definitely more difficult than I'm hopefully making it look, but from time to time, the mask comes off and I suddenly lose all of my health instead. Over here is the second part of Quietus, the cross guard, and there is a switch which solves the puzzle, and this switch which opens the door. And now that we've solved all 4 parts, 2 doors have opened in this room, one on this side and one on this side. And that takes us to the boss, which is the Dark Wyvern, one of the 2, whichever one takes your fancy. It's a technically interesting boss. It is not really that interesting on a playing the game perspective. You could take this slow and just kill the enemies from a distance with hammers. There's also an indestructible Ettin in the middle there, and that's just there so the boss works. Because otherwise it needs like a specific map point to target, otherwise it doesn't know what to do. It really needs the map to be built for this boss, which makes it sound a lot more interesting than it is. I'm just gonna use this icon of the defender, listen to the screech as he kills the Ettin over there, and just use a couple of flechettes to kill the many enemies over here. And the Chaos Serpents also have a tendency to start infighting with the Death Wyvern. So occasionally the boss is just not going to be that scary. But we did pick up Wings of Wrath over there. And another thing that makes this boss not so scary is that while it shoots possibly the strongest attack in the game, which is a fireball which explodes when it hits, and then explodes immediately afterwards again and just deals a whole bunch of damage, it can only attack forwards, and we're faster than it. And it hasn't got much health either. So it just dies really quickly. It is such an unusual boss, and I don't understand it at all, but it is kind of interesting in the sense that it takes so much work to get it to work at all, and sometimes it just gets stuck in the middle pillar and just hugs the pillar forever. It's just all very unusual. Not gonna ask any questions about it, just gonna pick up all these quartz flasks. The exit out of this hub has opened now, which is this portal. We have all the kills here. This brings you back to the main area. And there is still a couple of kills to get here. There is a couple of kills remaining in the swamp because we simply could not kill those enemies just yet. And there's a couple of enemies remaining in this hub as well. And there is the secret level to deal with as well. And I think I'll just do the secret level last because why not save the best for last? Sometimes that can spawn up here as well, so be mindful of that. And let us move on. Now, more likely than not, all the enemies are going to be in the same place that we still need to kill. I'm just going to fly over this just in case. There is still some Afrits alive. And also one thing I forgot to mention was this switch right here. This is almost certainly a deathmatch switch, because what it does is it lowers the wall that is usually over here before you pull the switch over here. And it only lowers it temporarily as well. Like after a while, suddenly the walls just raise again. And the only way I've managed to get here in single player is by using the Dark Servant on top of one of these pillars, jumping on top of it with the switch that you need to lower the walls anyway, jumping over the statues past all the enemies and pulling the switch. And if you then run outside, the Molotar that you spawn specifically to pull that switch is going to kill a bunch of enemies. And if you wait a little bit longer, you can see the wall start to raise again. so you can lower them once more with the regular switch instead. It's kind of unusual that it even exists, all things considered, but there also probably... I think there's a deathmatch spawn somewhere in here, and I can kind of understand that you'd want a switch just to not have to climb all the way up and take falling damage to get out of here. So, fair enough, I suppose, but it is unusual for sure. But, gonna go over here. Gonna take the shortcut, actually, because since we have flight, we might as well just fly in here anyway. And there's one Etten over here. There should be 4 more Afrits waiting for us up here as well. First of all is next to the portal, which you can actually just walk to regularly, but you have to take the staircase down, and it's an area where I didn't want to go to at the time. There is this area where you can fly over. I think you can reach this one with the boots of speed, but it's a very difficult jump, especially because this platform is like slightly lower than the rest of it. So you don't have much of a run up and you just end up falling down most of the time. But over here is an even larger jump. And you can sort of aggro that one, but this one's just too far around the corner to be able to aggro from like all the way over here. So those were the enemies that are pretty much for my skill level impossible to reach without flight. So figured I might as well just get it before trying to kill myself over and over to try and kill 2 enemies in total. Now there's 1 enemy remaining, not sure where, probably an Etten, due to the fact that I haven't heard anything else. I'm just gonna fly around the level real quick. Hopefully we can find the enemy reasonably quickly. But I'll be honest, I did not memorize where enemy respawns are in this level. Would have probably been a good thing to memorize, but at the same time, 3 more enemies just respawned. So we're probably just gonna make a big old loop through the area and hopefully eventually find the things that we are missing. Let's once again go back here first. Probably should just be swinging my weapon at all times. There's a possibility that something respawns here, I suppose. But I'm honestly not 100% sure. I did just hear an enemy over here, so it's fairly likely there's at least one of them. And let's just make sure there's not another one in here somewhere. But it does appear it is... I forgot a centaur! Alright, fair enough. I guess that'll do it. 1 more to find. I guess I just missed that passageway entirely, yeah. That does happen, I suppose, but that was the 1 enemy that I was missing previously. So at this point, it once again becomes a matter of finding the last of the Ettens. And I'm being a little bit more quiet in the hope that I can find it a little bit easier that way. But if not, I can just video edit to the part where I did find him and make my life a little bit easier that way. There we go. He was hiding in this cave, which does happen, I suppose. With that, I am just going to go back to the exit and leave. Because right now, we only have the hub world to deal with, where there is at least 4 more enemies remaining, but 1 more straggler, unfortunately. And that sounds like the Afrit that is guarding the secret level, so that actually is not a straggler. Because the secret level is right on top of this place. I will get to that in just a second. But first, I'm gonna go through the Wasteland and go back again, because that sets my Chaos device location to a nice spot, because we're gonna go down here. Slowly but surely. Semi-slowly. Because for some reason, there's 4 Ettens at the bottom of this fire pit, lava pit thing. And I'm honestly not sure why, but you know what? Fair enough. Also watch out with flying, that if you look down, you'll also fly down, so that's kind of dangerous. That's all kills in the hub. I'm just gonna Chaos device back out of there, and also grab some of these. And let us go to the secret level, where you can normally go by just jumping up these rocks right here, which is surprisingly difficult. And here is the secret level. Now first I'm just going to do this normally, because there is a lot to explain about this incredibly small level. But it's honestly not very obvious if you just hold the attack button what's going on here. But first, just gonna kill the Ettins, and after that is done, it is going to be Merry Christmas. Suddenly, a whole bunch of power-ups spawn. We can get a couple more discs of repulsion for later. There are 3 walls that you can kind of look through, and you can see a mystic urn. You cannot see this area on the map, so it is very missable. But each one of these converging areas has a mystic urn behind it, so that's obviously rather useful. And then at the bottom here is a switch, which says a door has opened on the Forsaken Outpost. And that opens up the secret level in Hub 4, provided that you also beat the secret level of Hub 1. Now, the thing that makes this level kind of interesting is, if you wait for 52 seconds roughly, it's either 52 or 53, suddenly it starts spawning Ettins every 10 seconds from that point on, and it'll start saying this many Ettins remaining. And the amount it spawns, I think, is dependent on whether or not there's currently something blocking the teleporter or not. So sometimes it spawns like 5, and other times it doesn't spawn anything if something's blocking the teleporter. But if you wait too long, if the number goes above 20, I think, then suddenly it says you waited too long, now you die. And it starts infinitely spawning Chaos Serpents. The exit closes and never opens again. So even if you use cheats to kill all the enemies instantly, you will still lower the stairs, but the exit is never going to open again. So watch out for that one. But if you just hold the attack button, you're never going to see it. So it's an odd one for sure. But with that, let's leave the secret level. Go to where the solved puzzle is. Kill the last of the respawned enemies, and I will. I've made it a point now, just making sure that he's not in this tower, but otherwise he might actually be near the end of the puzzle anyway. So let's go back in that direction. Never mind, he's over here. Very good. All the kills have been attained in hub number 2, and we can now leave this place through the exit that we opened after killing the boss. Your mind still reeling from your encounters within the Hypostyle, you stagger towards what you hope is a way out. Things seem to move faster and faster, your vision blurs and begins to fade. As the world collapses around you, the brightness of a teleportal engulfs you. A flash of light, and then you climb warily to your feet. You stand atop a high tower, and from below come the screams of the damned. You step forward, and instantly the sound of demonic chanting chills your blood. By all the gods of death, what place have you come to? By all the gods of pain, how will you ever find your way out? And that is the end of Hub 2. I hope you've all enjoyed it. It's a weird hub for sure, and there is a lot of kind of confusing level layouts, but there's also some cool secrets, like the deathmatch secrets in the caves of Circe, and the secret mystic urns, and the fact that the secret level is actually a lot more complicated than just being a single room is just pretty neat. But I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all next time when we play Hub 3. Bye bye.